Hello everyone and welcome to Collection Reflection. Today we will be reflecting on Marvel Legends Green Goblin from Spider-Man No Way Home. Let's go ahead and glide right into the articulation. He's got a full 360 in the head and the hood will move with it. With the hood on, he can look up that far and down that far. And he's got the same amount of tilt whether it's on or off. Without the hood, he looks up that far and down that far, which is not far at all. The goblin head looks up a little bit better and down just a bit more as well. Thankfully, the hoodie is a soft material, so it doesn't really get in the way of the articulation on either arm. And they can go out that far. He has a 360 in the bicep, double jointed elbows that go back all the way, and they're pinless. Both of his wrists should swivel 360, but my left one will not move, and even if I heat it up, I feel like I'm going to snap it off. But they both have the high five hinge. His satchel does lock it into place, but he does get a very good rotation in the diaphragm, and also tilts a bit. He also has drop down hips that help him kick forward that far, and back that far. He's also got an odd kind of a thigh swivel where it might get in the way if you turn it too far. But he's got great double jointed knees and they are also pinless. Frustratingly, he has no boot swivel, but he does have ankle pivot. And he can point his foot that far and bring it back that far. For a scientist, he is pretty nimble and flexible. Let's go ahead and see what he came with in terms of accessories. Starting with my least favorite accessory, it's definitely going to be that hood piece that he comes with. I do like the sculpt and the detail on it, but when you turn him to the profile, the fact that you're still able to see his face, I just don't think a hood should be pulled back that far. But maybe it's sculpted to look like he's flying through the air, so there's a little bit of wind going into the hood itself. With all that being said, it does have some decent detail, and from the back it actually looks kind of cool. And here's what he looks like with those goggles on his face. As you can see, they've got some pretty nice texturing around the strap, and I do like that the lenses are actually painted in a different color, so it kind of has that glossy look to it. Normally I just try to keep them around his neck, that way in case I ever want to put them on, you just kind of lift them over the eyes first, and then push it up over the back of his hair until it feels nice and snug. The pumpkin bomb is insanely small, and I will definitely lose it if I don't just keep it permanently in his hands. There's a close-up of that tiny little pumpkin bomb that it comes with. I do like the little green paint that they put on it. It is a little difficult to get out of his hand. What I normally do is I'll put one finger on the bomb and then another to kind of pry his pinky open and it'll pop out. Just make sure you don't lose it. It does kind of feel like he has smaller hands as well, especially when there's not that bomb in there to fill it out. They're not really an accessory, but his arm blades are made out of a softer plastic, so they will most likely come warped outside of the packaging. Here's an up-close look at that Willem Dafoe head sculpt, which I think they did such an incredible job with. They gave him such a nice, thick, full head of hair, and they actually made him look a little bit younger than he even appeared in the first Spider-Man movie. Even though that Willem Dafoe face sculpt is one of the main reasons why I bought this figure, what really made me purchase it right away was this Green Goblin head sculpt. The fact that they included this head sculpt in here to give us a full Green Goblin is something that honestly makes this pack worth buying, even at its very high price point. They did such a good job on those horrible yellow eyes! And I also like the mesh that they put on the little mouthpiece. It's those kind of details that push this figure over the edge. That scar on the face and the fact that it is a little bit off-center does kind of bum me out. But the positives definitely outweigh the negatives with this head sculpt. And while the hoodie is removable, I wouldn't recommend doing it too often because you will most likely stretch it out. So just be careful if you do plan on taking it off. The hoodie also made him look a little bit thicker because now the head looks a tad bit too big. And it also helped hide his neck. But with all that being said, this guy looks awesome without that hoodie. And he comes with these little attachment pieces that go on his feet, and then they connect him to the glider. They're also labeled left and right just in case you forget which way they go. Speaking of the glider, here's the little stand that comes with it. I do think it's a pretty genius idea to have each of these supports also be a port for the glider itself, and I like that they are varying heights as well. But here's the accessory that makes this pack worth so much. I like the little pattern that they chose for the sculpt, and I do appreciate how the purple matches the actual figure itself. He comes with a massive glider, which does have articulation, and it has a pretty decent heft to it. It honestly feels like a figure all on its own. You can check out all that little detail. I don't know if this is a thruster or maybe where it drops some more pumpkin bombs. But you got some missiles here, maybe a couple of guns here and there. Same thing on the other side. And I like all the little touches of green that they kind of put throughout it. I do wish it had a little bit more of that, but I'm happy that those details are there. The blades on the front of the glider are made out of a softer plastic, so they kind of look a little dainty to me, but it does add to the overall aesthetic of the design. And thankfully, the glider does come with a little bit of articulation in these little spots here, so once you connect the actual supports to his feet using that little notch right there for his heel, slipping his foot into that hole, and then you plug this bottom port into the glider itself. I do like that the glider can open up a little bit. I think this is for it to kind of hover or maybe fit in between buildings. It also gives you a chance to check out some more of that sculpted detail that they put on the inside. Part of me wishes that these wings would actually kind of clip together in some way, because they almost seem like they bump into each other whenever you try to close them. But overall, the real question is this glider worth the cost of an actual figure on its own? I'd say that they use just about as much plastic and paint detail that they would on a regular figure, plus it does come with articulation and engineering, so I'd say yes. We've seen his awesome accessories, now let's check out how he compares to some other figures. For our first comparisons, we have Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man from No Way Home and Hobgoblin. And I actually want to take a closer look at both of these comparisons. The main reason I wanted to take a closer look at these two is because I think they have some of the best head sculpts from Marvel Legends to date. Even though Marvel Legends is usually pretty good when it comes to just the plain face, I think the smirk that they gave Willem Dafoe makes it look a lot more like the actor, and together I think they look really great. Here are the two gliders compared to one another. Obviously the size difference is pretty massive. You could almost fit this one inside of it, but there's actually nowhere for it to like clip on or hold on. And I was always let down by the size of this glider. I know that they had to probably make it small enough to fit within the packaging, but that's kind of why I'm happy that they made this Goblin figure more of a deluxe size, because it makes the glider seem like an extra figure as opposed to just another piece of an accessory. Unfortunately, Green Goblin's feet are too big to fit into the glider, and the Hobgoblin's feet are too small to fit into the supports, so he won't actually be able to fly that glider. So this is the custom glider that I made for the Hobgoblin. I just didn't like how small the actual glider that he came with was, so I ended up making one out of foam, and there's a toothpick there to hold on to this little flame effect. That way it's kind of optional. And then I also have got these little bits here. In my head, they're kind of like missiles or machine guns, but they can also come out and be little swords. So the handles had to be kind of thick because he didn't come with interchangeable hands. So it's only big enough to hold his pumpkin bomb. So I made the handles thick enough to where you could still hold on to those as blades. Next up, also from Marvel Legends, we have the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man and Scorpion. Goblin is still taller than both. For the 5-inch comparison, we have Best Action's Raphael and the Shredder. And with our 4-inch comparison, we're taking a look at Marvel Epic Hero Series Spider-Man and Carnage, both of which come to about the belt of the Green Goblin. And lastly, we have the one who would like to take it back to formula, Pumpkin Wrapper's head. When it comes to enhancing this figure, I really think he could have benefited from some boot swivels. I've seen a lot of Marvel Legends recently come out without the ankle or boot swivel, and it is disappointing, but it's especially disappointing for characters like this, where it could have helped out a ton with posability on that glider. I'm also not the biggest fan of that purple hood. It looks okay at certain angles, but I just think it's a little too shallow and doesn't cover up enough of his face. I think if it came out just a little bit further and kind of casted a shadow, it'd make the character look a lot more menacing. It does look like he's in mid-flight with it, so the wind is kind of filling up the hood and kind of blowing it out a little bit, which does leave room for that awesome face sculpt. But if you don't have him in a flying pose, it doesn't look that good at all. So that brings us to the question: should you collect this figure or reflect it? At first I thought the price point was pretty high for just the figure, but then when I realized how much detail and paint went into creating this guy with pretty much all new parts on a pinless body, plus that glider isn't just a cheap piece of plastic, it has a little bit of articulation and a lot of sculpted detail. I also like the paint, and the fact that it came with a stand is a bit of a game changer. This figure is unlike any other Goblin I've ever had before, and I've got to say, it is my favorite. So I recommend collecting this figure. I think it retailed for around $55 or so. If you could get it for $50, that'd be great. But if you're lucky enough to actually find it in the store, I'd say jump on it while you can. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a nice chuckle at some point in your day. Happy New Year's and happy holidays to everyone out there. And please, try to be kind to somebody, because it could really change their life. I'll talk to you next time.